Hello and welcome back to my channel, Misfit Reader. That is me. Today I'm going to be talking about this trilogy, the Lightworld, Darkworld trilogy, that I just finished reading. And yeah, so I'm just gonna kind of get into it a little bit. So first off, this trilogy I bought actually for my friends for Christmas, and it's March now, and basically I'm a fairy hoe. I'm gonna push that out of the way real quick. um, and I couldn't help reading it because this is actually a reread for me. I read it when they probably first came out. I think I was like 15 or something. They came out in 2009. So, originally, I don't know, I had to say that. But they came out in 2009, and that's when I read them. So it's been a really long time, and I remembered like the gist of the series, and I thought my friends would really like it. And they always introduce me to new books and new authors and stuff. So I thought this was a series that they might like, and so I bought it for them for Christmas. And then picked it up and I started reading it, and then I couldn't help myself, and it took me a long time because the second book is kind of hard to get through. Or we'll get to that in a little bit though. Um, yeah, and then I decided to make a video about them. So, first the series. This is the first book, Queen of Light. I really like what the author does with the cover too, because it has like a little saying thing here, and then it does at the bottom as well. And I'll go ahead and like read that real quick. Focus, camera. So at the top, an unimagined destiny, an undeniable passion. And then when you flip it, 3 worlds, nowhere to belong. So I always thought that was kind of cool. And so the trilogy is about mostly fairies, and I really like it because it's kind of different as far as other fae books. When you look at it as a whole, not so much, but she really, especially in the first book, puts a big emphasis on their appearance, because these fairies have antennas and stuff and wings. So I enjoyed that because it brings it back to what fairies are kind of supposed to be, instead of just super gorgeous humans. I mean, they still are kind of that, but they also have weird bug things and stuff. So yeah, so it follows fairies for the most part, and it takes place in a somewhat dystopian like future where the veil that all magical creatures and stuff used to live on has broken, and all the magical creatures got spilled onto Earth. And basically there was a huge war over the humans and the magical creatures and who was going to be in control of Earth. And at first the fairies had like won, and the humans went underground, and then the humans rose back up, and there was another war, and the fae lost that time. I know that the other magical creatures are like involved in it, but they make it seem like it's just the fairies and the humans, but all the other magical creatures are also underground. So the fairies lose, and now they live underground, and that is where our main character in the first book, Ayla, lives. And she was born underground, and she's actually half human, half fae. And the underground is actually like our sewers and subway stations and all that stuff, and so that's where all the magical creatures live. And then the underground is divided into 2 different factions, which is the light world and the dark world. And the light world is like the fairies, trolls, dragons, and like some other little magical creatures, and they all live in the light world. And then the dark world is elves and like werewolves and vampires and that jazz. And then there's also a neutral zone called the Strip, and that's kind of where both magical creatures and stuff from um, either sides can kind of intermingle without worrying about a war breaking out, but it's still like not the best place to be. Shit still happens there. Even though it's supposed to be a neutral zone. So there's that. So the first book follows Ayla, and um and she is an assassin, half fairy, half human, and she doesn't have any actual ambition throughout the book, really. I mean, eventually she kind of does, but it's mostly just to save herself. And it's like she would have been fine being an assassin her whole life, but turns of events happen and change, and she ends up like in the court. So she would have been fine being an assassin, but you know, shit happens. um, the story really takes place when she's on a mission, and she meets Malachi, who is actually a death angel, and they go to kill each other because he's a darkling, and lightworlders are basically racist towards anyone from the dark world, and they kill them. And he thinks that she's a fairy, and he touches her, and he turns mortal. And then after that, that spurs the events, because now he's immortal, and now he wants to kill the person who turned immortal, even though really it's just the fact that he touched her, and that's what turned him. So it's his own fault. Also, another main character is Garrett. And Garrett is the type of character, he's like an advisor to Ayla, and he mentors her and is the reason why she's even in the Assassin's Guild. He kind of took her in and taught her everything she knows, and he is also the brother to the queen of the court, and he comes across as like the loving mentor and like the best friend and the doting brother, and then you get his point of view and you turned out he is an ambitious little hoe. It's another big reason of why anything even happens in the book, kind of. And so I'm probably going to go a little too far into detail here, so I mean, the book's been out for a decade, but spoiler alert, if anyone wants to read it, I might be giving away too much information. I should have said that beforehand. But so basically, Garrett is an ambitious little hoe, and he also has been grooming Ayla to be his obedient little wife, and he wants to marry her. She doesn't have any real feelings for him, but she doesn't think that she's even capable of feelings, and she's like, well, I should take this proposal of marriage because like this is the closest thing to love I'm ever gonna get. Like, I don't even expect to be happy. I'm just gonna have a comfortable life, and that's like the closest thing to ambition that she has, is that it would be stupid of her not to do it, especially since like all the other fairies, since Ayla is half human, look down on her, and then they're all looking at Garrett like, bro, why do you even like her? She's half human, that's gross. And Garrett has like a fan club because, you know, he's the queen's brother, so he's thinks highly of himself and is one of those snooty yucks. Turn of events happen and all that stuff. Oh, and then Malachi, who is trying to murder her because he thinks that she turned him human. In a way she did, but like I said, it's really Malachi's fault. Him and Ayla end up having this undeniable thing, and they're trying to avoid each other, but, you know, lust is a thing, and they end up being true loves, and spurious events happen, and I'm not going to say anything else except that, without giving away too much of the details, but the end of the book is that Ayla does end up becoming queen of the court, and that is going to take us to the next book. But so I rated this book 5 stars, and I apologize if I'm all over the place and not giving like the best information and stuff. It's my first time doing this, so I'm not sure like how much information to give. Where do I stop? I don't know, bro. I rated it 5 stars, though as a reread it was a lot different for me. There was a lot that I had forgotten and stuff, but there are parts of it that made it still a 5 stars when realistically it's probably like a 3, but I just really loved the first book with the fact that the author has these really cool descriptions as the fairies, especially like when they die. I love when the fairies die because they turn into elemental things instead of blood, or it's like blood comes out of them and it turns into falling leaves and their limbs curl up on themselves like branches. She is very repetitive as far as talking about their antennas all the time. The antennas isn't so much, but they have a life force that they, like this other site, and they can see their tree of life within them, and which is like their life force, and that is super repetitive, I feel like, in the first book. It's brought up like every other time. And the antennas isn't so much because I will forget about it, and then all of a sudden she's like, and then their antennas glowed red and twitched. And I'm like, oh shit, that's right, they're like bugs. And I'm like, that's right, I have to imagine that there's antennas on their heads because that's how they look. But she brings it up more often in this one than the other 2 books. So I rated it 5 stars, mostly just because I like most of the writing. Some things that were kind of annoying is the point of view changes. So the point of view changes between Ayla, Malachi, and Garrett through this book for the most part. And there's not a solid, like, I mean, it's a fairly well done break without having to say like Malachi and Garrett and then Ayla. So it's not quite deliberate. When the first point of view changes, you're like, what? And then, but within the first paragraph, you can figure it out, whose point of view you're in. So, not the best, but it's not the worst I've ever read as far as point of view changes. So, that's the first book. Second book, Child of Darkness, took me forever to get through. I think it is a super slow read. Also, no smut. Maybe that's just me, but that helped. That made it a little slower too. But this is the cover for this one. Focus, dang it. Alright, well, close enough, right? Okay. And the top of this one says, Public Alliances, Secret Lovers. These are the worlds at war. That's what the bottom part says. And so, the second book is also really hard because your main character changes from Ayla to, and spoiler alert if you want to read these, but like I said, they've been out for a decade. I don't know if there's even, okay. But, the point of view changes, and at least for me, it was kind of hard because Ayla is no longer the main character. The main character is now her daughter, Sir Redwyn, and the point of view changes between Ayla, Malachi, Sir Redwyn, and Cedric. And Cedric is in the first book, and this book, but Cedric is basically Ayla's like really good friend that she made during all the shit that happened in the first book, and is her like royal advisor and has always been there for her. And Sir Redwyn, her daughter, she's grown up as a spoiled little princess brat who hates being in the palace and always is running off, and Ayla's trying to just do everything that she can to keep her there and to protect her since she's the royal heir and is the symbol of their future and all this other jazz. And Sir Redwyn has, like, she doesn't fucking care. she thinks her mom's, they're supposed to be immortal, so her mom's gonna live forever. So why does she even need to learn about being a queen? And she just wants to have fun and be a kid. And I forgot to mention ages. In the first book, Ayla is like 2021. This book's the red one is now 2021, so 20 years have passed. Yeah. And so main character is Redwin, and it's really hard to follow that spoiled brat thing. But also Ayla is making some dumb, motherly, queenly decisions that, like, I think it was within the first 3 chapters, Ayla does something, and you're just like, no, Ayla, you can't do this. You can't just betroth 2 people without consulting either parties or anyone else to figure out what they're gonna do. So, yeah, spoiler. Ayla, I don't know, do I need to say spoiler every time? I'm giving too much details away throughout the whole video. Ayla betroths Sir Redwin and Cedric together, and Cedric is mad because he's like, Sir Redwin is a fucking child. Gross. He's been alive since the veil was not broken, so he is very old, but he's a fairy, so he doesn't look old at all. But yeah. And Ayla is like, she finds out she's got a crush on this elf, and the elves are like the sworn enemies of the fairies, and the elf doesn't know she's a fairy because she disguises herself as human. And Cedric, he's also got a side piece. He's seeing some gypsy hoe and is like in love with her, and all this, as much as they make it like clear like the fairies aren't like, they don't love like humans love, but yeah. So we follow them and then enter in new character Bushan. I have no idea how to pronounce his name. In my head I've been pronouncing it Bushan this whole time, but it actually sounds better in my head than saying it out loud. So we gonna call him B. Enter new character B. They find out in this book that, so it's been believed this whole time that the fairies and the magical creatures in the underworld are all that's left, because the queen that was the predecessor, right? Yes. Before Ayla, who was Queen Mab, and she was a queen that was, she was the queen when the veil was still around, and so she's like the true queen. And so everyone in the underground believes that this is it, and this is what's left of their race. And then B comes to the underground, and he is someone from an upground colony, and they have their own queen, Danae, who's been ruling over this small little colony. And so everyone is basically freaking out because, oh yeah, there's enforcers. The humans have enforcers, which are like the magic police who kill any magical creatures, and that includes humans like gypsies and then biomechs, and they force them either back into the underground or they kill them. And so that's why the fairies and stuff haven't, I'm going to see, excuse me. And that's why the fairies and stuff haven't tried to go back up there. But now they're finding out that there's an existing colony, and they, basically think that he's there to lure away the rest of the court so that Danae can become queen. And then there's some stuff that goes on with the elves, and the elves are the sworn fairy enemies. And yeah, so this book has a lot of like action, but it was kind of hard to get through because it's, at least for me, it was hard to change into the main character of like this spoiled little girl who's doesn't really know what's going on, but it's also not her fault because she's been raised up this way to protect her, and no one wants to tell her what's really going on, and stuff, and she doesn't talk to anyone about how she feels and stuff because she thinks it's just all, you know, whatever. Nothing's serious to her. And so at some point, even though Cedric and Sir Edwin really don't like each other, hate is a strong word, but that could be it for the beginning of their relationship, especially when they find out that they are betrothed to one another and they don't want to be. But obviously at some point they end up teaming up and become each other's only allies. And that is the second book. I haven't rated this on Goodreads yet, but my rating is probably a 3, if not a 2.7, because it's hard to get through. There is zero smut, which I didn't realize until I was reading the third book, and some smut came up, and I was like, hold on a minute. Did we go a whole middle second book with no smut? So, yeah, it's the second. And then this is the third book, which during this book is basically when I decided to make a video. So I have some little tabs to kind of talk about. I don't know how in depth I'm going to get into it. But here's the cover for this one. Woo! And the top says, Old Gods, New Betrayals, Focus. Focus, camera. I should stop moving. Did it focus? It focused. Cool. So the top says, Old Gods, New Betrayals, The Last Battle of the Fae. So, the point of view stays the same in this book, but it is mostly Sir Edwin and Cedric. Ayla and Malachi are no longer in the picture. I'm not going to say what happens, but they're not with them. And that is all I'm going to say on that. But, so Sir Edwin and Cedric are their only allies and basically their only friends, and they had to leave the underground. And so this book is their journey to the Upworld camp, and they have to try and protect themselves because they believe that, you know, Danae is just trying to get her own followers, and Sir Edwin is the true heir to the Fae court, and so her life is on the line because of that, and fairies are conniving, scheming assholes, and yeah, so this is all about their trip and the struggles through that. And then Danae is one of those like snakes that's like pretends to be all if you get what I'm saying through that motion. Yeah, she's the kind of person or fairy that feigns empathy and sincerity and comes across as like a genuinely good person, but actually isn't, and is really a snaky hoe who wants the court for herself and stuff. But Sir Edwin and Cedric, they don't think that they're gonna get any more allies at this camp. Half the court has already went over to Danae's thing. They don't believe Sir Edwin can lead them, and which is a fair point because, you know, she's barely made her presence at court in the underground and hasn't really done anything for her people up until now, and she's going through some basically PTSD from everything that happened in the second book, and the struggle is real. So I'd probably rate the third book as 5 stars again. just because I really like it. And there is a trope in this, which is the chosen one trope, but I think it's done fairly well. I haven't read a whole lot of chosen one tropes. Well, maybe I haven't, I just didn't realize it. But so there is the chosen one trope in the series, and the chosen one is Sir Redwyn, but she doesn't know it up until like the last 2 chapters of this book, which is the last in the trilogy. And the only one who knew beforehand was her mother, who like a goddess told her in a dream. And but Ayla never says that to anyone. No one else knows that Sir Redwyn is supposed to be the chosen one for their race, to unite both of the peoples, which is the human and the fae. Which, yeah. So Redwyn the whole time never thinks that she is even worthy to lead her people. She doesn't even want to be queen, but she is the chosen one, and so she starts having these visions from these goddesses that she barely knows about, guiding her through her journey, which I think is pretty cool. And like one of the main ones is this goddess Morgan, who is described super cool, but she's a warrior goddess. And Seren's like, I'm not a warrior, and she's like, you're gonna be. You have the warrior heart. This is it. And Seren's like, I don't know, man, but okay. The red tabs are for smut. I thought I was gonna go a little more in depth with these, but I'm thinking maybe I won't. But I'll read this first tab so that you can get an idea of the descriptive. That's what I like about this one too, is that the description that the author does in the first book comes back, which I really like. So I'm gonna. From his open mouth, a breath of snow unfurled in a wintry gust. The blood that flowed from him came as clear, crystalline water, and he fell against the steps, shattering as his eyes rolled back into his head and closed over like ice on a pond. So, see, I really like how, like, when they die, they turn into some form of element, whichever one I guess is like the closest, or that they're the closest to. So I think that that's pretty cool. And yeah, the third book's probably my favorite out of the trilogy, to be honest. I think it's 5 stars. Clearly, I mean, the books are really small, and the author could have done a lot more with it, which would have been cool. The world building would have been, like, clearly she could have done like a lot more, and the world building could have been like a lot better and really nice. But I think for how small the books are, that she did a pretty good job of pulling you in and making it this short little trilogy. I also think it's like pretty dark, since she does a really good job of putting you in the sewers in the first book and the second, of like this is where they live. They live in these sewers. They have to go through the fucking sewers. The cut there is because I ran out of time, and so I had to start a new thing. But anyways, so yeah, it's, she puts you right in there in the sewers, and when Ayla is an assassin in the first book, she has to trudge through the slime and this grossness, and yeah, there's some, it really puts you into the fact that it's gross down there. And they really live in the sewers. Hi, kitty. You gonna jump up here? No? Yeah? Maybe? Oh, my coffee. But yeah, so that's that trilogy. I'm finally going to give them back to my friends. Or not even back. I'm going to give them to my friends for their gift. I'm sorry it took so long. As I said before, I'm a procrastinating hoe. Actually, I don't think I did say that. I said I was a potato couch person. Which, isn't too different than a procrastinating hoe. This is my kitty. Her name is Starscream. Don't knock over my coffee, please. Don't knock it over. I'm just gonna move it. I don't trust you. Don't trust a hoe. Yeah, anyways, so that was my January, part of January and February read, and then I read this in like a week. And I can read faster than that, I promise. I just work, and yeah, I'm trying to do better. But for my next video, well, actually, I don't know. Will it be my next video? Probably not. But my next book review is going to be on this book that I got for my birthday from my boyfriend's mom, Renee. Thank you. The Sarah J. Maas House of Earth and Blood, Crescent City. I'm very excited to read. I just started it. I'm only on page 19, if that tells you anything. To be fair, I started reading it last night in bed when it was like 2 o'clock in the morning when I was tired. So I'm going to read more of this today. It is super pretty. It's got like the inside cover. I'm going to show you that. So that's inside. And it's just so pretty. So I'm really excited to read this. And so that'll probably be my next book review video. And hopefully I'll have gotten better at this and not seem all over the place maybe. I don't know. I'm trying, guys. But alright, I'm gonna log off because I feel like this video is pretty long for only my second video. So I'm gonna sign off now. Bye.